Around 6 years ago, on March the 10th, 2019, this library was released on the Silence and Other Sounds website. So if you know Silence and Other Sounds, if you've been around this channel for a while, you are probably familiar with Stringake, Mangle Strings Gestures. It's one of my very first libraries, and it's one to which I owe a lot because it contributed to put Silence and Other Sounds on the map. It has been very popular. In this year I have found it in many Hollywood trailers, movies, series and whatsoever. And still today, after 6 years, it still sells quite well. So in this video I would like to show you how I created the sounds in Stringake, and it's a technique that you can use for any kind of horror sound effects design and Chef-I as well. So stay with me. What you see right here is As Layer by Twisted Tools. It's an incredible reactor ensemble that has been released a while ago. Sorry to put always the same disclaimer at the beginning of each one of my videos, but this one has been purchased by me. It's not a sponsored content, just stuff that I buy for my sound design work. And I believe that everything that Twisted Tools have put out is just incredible for sound design. And I particularly like As Layer for the way it has been conceived, because it basically allows you to stack a number of samples on the top of each other, play them simultaneously, and control many parameters of the stack of the samples of each individual sample independently. And an interesting thing is that you can load in Reaktor a sample map, which means a number of samples, let's say 100 samples, and let As Layer randomly pick a selection from these 100 samples, which is exactly what I did here. If I click on this waveform button, you can see in Reaktor the sample map section, so to speak. And all the samples that I've loaded here, they all belong to the source recordings folder in Stringake. You probably know that our libraries have the samples folder open and accessible. And in the specific case of Stringake, you both have the design sounds as the source recording, which means the dry sound that I recorded with no further processing except some very minimal EQ and denoising, and which have been used to create the design sounds that you find in the other folders. So to just give you an idea, let's play a few of these source sounds. This is a cello sound. So there are all these small building blocks, so to speak, that I asked the musician that I hired to record. And when you combine these sounds and each one of the samples in the stack in As Layers have a different setting, has a different setting applied to it, maybe different volume, different pitch, different pan, etc., you see that the final sound becomes richer and also becomes more designed, actually. You hear things that some, are proper of strings, and other ones are a little bit more exaggerated, pitched down, pitched up, and this creates the magic. And partially the sound in Stringake have been created with this technique, either with As Layer or with other samplers, because this idea of stacking samples on the top of each other and apply different things to different samples is something that you can do in any sampler. And I started from here and applied these techniques in different ways and different samplers. But you can see that one of the things that I really like in AsLayer is that you can automatically randomize many parameters. For example, here I have set AsLayer to randomize the selection of samples that are picked from the samples from the sample map. You randomize I randomize the pitch of each one of the sample every time that the sampler is triggered, the pan, and the volume. And you can assign a range within which you want the randomization to happen. In the case of the sample selection, it's the whole sample map, so it's 127 samples. In the source recording folder in StringGet, there is way more than that, way more samples than that, but we can just, the maximum value of samples in a sample mapping reactor can be 127, unless you want other samples to overlap, which is not something that I wanted here. For the pitch, I have set a range between, I believe, minus 24 and plus 5 semitones, I think. This is the range of the stereo image, and I've not randomized the volume. So every time that I hit random, something like this will happen. That sounds really good to me. And everything good, something good happens at every retrigger. Yeah, there is a sample in StringGet that sounds a little bit like this. Well, I could go on for hours by doing this. And if you paid attention in the previous example, there is just this ethereal background layer, which, by the way, is a combination of Dojo, which is one of our libraries. It's this one. Sorry. Okay, this is the Kumita, the kata scene, where you have all these textural sound. In this case, you have these string sounds. Okay, so just one layer with this note, plus a texture from another library of ours, which is a free library. It's called Relict. Okay, so just this background, and just by putting this cool sound design, cool sound effects on the top of it, you already set the tone. Because this is one of the things that, as I say, that I wanted to achieve. I just wanted to come up with these simple, short sounds, but at the same time they are rich, simple but complex, so to speak, that can, immediately set the tone. And something that I like to do when I work with randomization is to live record all the samples that randomly come from the device that I'm using. In this case, it's AsLayer. So on this track here, track number 2, I'm receiving the input from AsLayer. And so if I just hit record, but you can just hit record and keep recording and then cherry pick the samples that you like the most and then go on with processing. This has been one of the stages that I used to create the sound in StringGet. Then I selected the one that I liked the most, and then I kept on going with further processing, with granularization, other layering, so on and so forth. And I think it's a very, very effective technique as long as you have some good quality source recordings, because you can come up with any sort of technique of randomization, whatever you want. But in my opinion, if you don't have a good sound, a good source recording batch, some good source sounds, you basically have nothing. And I spent an insane amount of time with this musician that I hired to come up with convincing sounds. And if you think that they are just string noises, well, I can tell you that if you work with highly qualified musicians that are accustomed to play complicated stuff, who are very, very competent on their instrument, and just telling them to create these noises, which have to be musical at the same time, is one of the most difficult things. Because most of these guys, cellists, violinists, you know, they have studied their instruments for years. They are highly respectable, highly skilled musicians. And so it takes some work to get them into this frame, which might be completely unusual for them. And I remember we recorded all this stuff into an empty museum in Naples, where I come from, which set a little bit, you know, this kind of creepy tone. And it took a while before they got, you know, the concept. And once they were there, they recorded all these cool short gestures, which then I processed in this way and also in many other ways. And if I show you the library itself, StringEgg, and I play you a few of the sounds, you can well, let's put this in mute for a second. Let's get let's play again the. And so this concept of creative layering is something that I've tried to translate to some of the engines and the script in some other of the Silence and Other Sounds libraries. For example, in Paint Piano, which basically has the very same basic concept of StringEgg to come up with individual sound effects based on real instruments, in this case, piano. You know, I'll give you just a quick idea of. Case, well, I added a functionality that you can access here in the Smash screen, and now you will see why I call it Smash, because if you click on this big button here, basically a very similar thing very similar thing happens, that multiple samples are picked and create this big, you know, smashing effect. And I also gave several smashing options. This is hammer, where basically, you know, I had in my mind this idea of many hammers that smash the piano, and you have this effect. Or you have other options like katana, where I imagine this, you know, long blade sliding, you know, on the piano strings, and this is kind of effect that you have. This is to create more rising kind of sounds, okay? But the basic concept is always the same one. Start from some source recordings and then find a way to creatively layer them. You can find something similar also in Helen, our horror voices library, where you have just 3 layers of sounds which can be adjusted independently, and you can instruct the instrument to randomly select different samples every time that you play this green button here. And so come up always with different sounds. So I would say that in sound design, especially for horror, a good 80% of the work, given that you have good source recording, is basically layering. And many of our instruments are based on this concept, with some source recordings that allow you to customize your own sound effects. So guys, thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope that you have enjoyed it. And in this case, please subscribe to the Silence and Other Sounds channel. I'm doing my very best to be consistent with these videos. I would like to open the doors of the creative lab, which Silence and Other Sounds actually is. and show you what really happens creative-wise behind the development of our product. So, once again, thanks a lot and see you next time. Bye.